Bring that! Oh, bring that!
Touchdown! San Francisco!
McCaffrey's gonna score!
He gets picked off by Hufanga.
Fred Warner with the INT. George Kittle.
That's a sackaroonie, baby.
Ball is out. It is picked up. Run back the other way.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Gold Rush Podcast. I'm your host, Javen Takar. And yes, if you are coming back right after watching the 49ers mock draft, I am wearing the same thing, and it is a different day. Well, I was recording this video originally, and then my camera died. So I was thinking, could I just start from where it ended, or just re-record the entire thing? It was only a couple minutes, and I think I could have been a little bit more insightful. So, yeah, I'm just re-recording that, wearing the same thing because continuity. So, yes, don't mind that. So today we're going to be talking about some of the actual prospects that the 49ers could target in the early rounds. That's rounds 1, 2, maybe even the third round we can sneak in there. And then just a couple of positions that they're going to target, which very commonly we're seeing, the offensive tackle. We're probably going to go through the cornerbacks. A couple D linemen as well, defensive tackles, edge rushers. Even though they mingled with that in free agency, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to draft a guy if he's the best player available at that position. And then we're also going to look at wide receivers on the offensive side of the ball, just because, yes, they have Deebo Samuel, yes, they have Ayuk, yes, they have Juwan Jennings, but Jennings is on a 1-year tender deal. Ayuk, we don't know what's going on with that whole situation. He might not even be on the team next year. And then Deebo Samuel, it's tough to rely on him to play a full season. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to draft a receiver. I think in the later rounds, after you acknowledge the O-line, you acknowledge the secondary, then you can either go edge rusher or wide receiver in that third or so round. So yeah, let's hop right in. I have the NFL just ranking their prospects on their website, and so let's just talk about them. So they actually have J.C. Latham graded as the highest tier over Joe Alt, who I think that Joe Alt is the best tackle in this class, but Latham has been really, really solid, very strong hands. He moves people. I wasn't the biggest fan of him at first, but watching him a little bit more, yeah, you can see the power there in his hands and just everything about him. He moves people, and he would be a welcome addition for sure. However, I don't think he gets there. I think he honestly might go even before the 20s. A couple guys, I guess I should make this clear. I want to go over the guys that are going to be there at 31. So Latham is probably not going to be there. Joe Alt is probably not going to be there. Talise Fuaga, he might slip a little bit. I had him as a top 10 pick, so I don't think he's going to be there. Troy Fontenot, as much as I love this guy, and I think he's honestly worth trading up for, he's not going to be there at 31. Olu Fashanu, also not going to be there. So now it's like the second tier of guys who are still extremely, extremely talented, that are not bad at all, that the Niners will be looking at. That's going to be Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton, Jordan Morgan, Blake Fisher, Kieran, I don't know exactly how to pronounce that last name, Caden Wallace, Patrick Paul. I think Wallace is not even a first-round pick. I know the Niners bought him in on a top 30 visit, but they're just like, he'll be in the later rounds. Kingsley Suamataia, Roger Rosengarten, if you want to put him in the first round. So it's kind of those pool of players that the Niners could be looking at. Amarius Mims is my personal draft crush. I really hope that we can land him. Just a physical beast. He's 6'8" or something like that. 6'8", 340 pounds. You see it on the screen. I mean, he is a mean man, dude. And I really hope that we're able to land him, because I think that the talent is there. He didn't play as many games as some of these other prospects, but the physical traits are there. He's literally the prototype offensive tackle that you would want for your team. A guy that can move really well for his size. I was listening to the Athletics football podcast, and they pretty much kind of described him like a Trent Brown that can move, which I think is a perfect spot-on comparison for him. Tyler Guyton, I'm not the biggest fan of Tyler Guyton personally. He's another guy that's really, really tall. I think he's also 6'8", 6'8", 322 pounds, but I feel like he can play a little high up occasionally. Not the greatest run blocker, which is obviously very important in the 49ers Kyle Shanahan offense. Yeah, so honestly, even if Tyler Guyton is on the board, I might even skip out on him. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. He's 6'8", 322, but I feel like he looks a little slim in pictures that you see. So yeah, I in my personal opinion, I kind of hope that Guyton gets taken beforehand, or just Niners skip out on him entirely. Jordan Morgan is another guy who can struggle with footwork a little bit, but the potential is there, especially versatility-wise. He can play inside, or a lot of people are saying put him at guard, which I think could be interesting to see, because the Niners need so much help all along the offensive line. Right guard, right tackle, even the center could improve. So I wouldn't be too upset picking up Jordan Morgan and just seeing where he fits best, where you can get the most out of him, whether that's competing with McGlinchey at right tackle or competing with Feliciano and Spencer Burford at right guard. Maybe that guard position is a little bit crowded, but Burford, he's still a young guy, and there was some issues though late in the stretch of the season. Burford wasn't playing as well as he was just last season. I was a big fan of Burford, but he wasn't really living up to how he performed. And then John Feliciano pretty much outperformed him, took his starting spot. And, but yeah, Feliciano is very solid. I wouldn't say to go and target a guard. I think that we can live with Feliciano. And if that right tackle position is more solidified, it would just help him out a little bit more. I honestly don't know too much about Kieran A. That's what we'll call him. I don't want to mispronounce his last name. 6'5", 323 pounds. Only a 6.25 prospect grade. Ivy League though, went to BYU. He's a third round projected pick. Went to Yale actually. Sorry, not BYU. I was thinking of the other guy on BYU, Kingsley Suamataia, a guy who I am not mad if the Niners go on ahead and they pick him. He is he's a right tackle, purely a young guy. He was a redshirt sophomore, 6'5", 326 pounds. Again, out of BYU, which usually produces good O linemen. Not a bad target if the Niners decide to skip out on tackle in the first round. If he's there in the second round at pick 62, I would not be upset snagging Kingsley Suamataia. Actually, before I do get into that, let me talk about the 49ers picks that they actually do have. So the Niners have 10 draft picks, 31st overall in the first round, 63 in the second round, 94 in the third. They have 3 picks in the fourth round, 124, 132, and 135. 1 pick in the fifth round, 176. 2 picks in the sixth round, 211 and 215, and then their last pick in the seventh round coming at 251. So a lot of picks, a lot of potential to trade up, a lot of capital. So if there is a guy that they really like, if Troy Fautanu slips past a little bit, going in the 20s, trade up and go get that guy. Troy Fautanu, I guess I didn't really touch on Troy Fautanu. Out of Washington, the guy can ball. I mean, he is stellar. You watch the way he plays, and it is amazing. I absolutely love watching him. He plays all 5 positions. I think he can play all 5 positions. A little bit of a smaller frame, getting listed as a tackle. He is 6'3", I want to say 6'4", 317 pounds. A little bit more of an NFL guard type of body. But I mean, he can very well play tackle. He's a guy that can move. He's got very flexible hips, strong hands, great hand placement, and he moves people. He moves people. So Troy Fautanu is also one of my draft crushes with Amarius Mims. Yeah. So after that, this is kind of in that second and third round. Roger Rosengarten is another guy, played with Fautanu in Washington, protecting Michael Penix's blind side. He's a guy that I wouldn't be too upset if we do snag again in that second round. First round, no. Definitely not a first round guy, but that second, third round, I wouldn't be too upset with. 6'5", 308 pounds, just a solid lineman. The Niners went to the Washington, campus, and they watched him, it seemed. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised even taking him. And then after that, Patrick Paul too. Also, I haven't seen too much about Patrick Paul, but I've heard his name a lot, and so he also could be the pick. In my personal opinion, I think the best case scenario is Troy Fautanu. If he somehow slips, if the Niners trade up, Troy Fautanu is who we want. Amarius Mims, I wouldn't mind too much. Other than that, though, I actually wouldn't mind Kingsley Suamataia. Even if we trade down, we can trade that pick 31, trade down, and then pick him in that second round. because I do fully expect Colton McKivitz to start week 1 and even throughout the season. I think that if you get a guy who's younger, who's developmental, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, i.e. Sumataya and Mims. Both those guys, they can use some development and use some time to learn the Kyle Shanahan playbook, because of course, as important and as difficult as it is to learn for the quarterbacks, the receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, the offensive line plays just as big of a part in the Shanahan offense. And we saw that happen, on the last play in the Super Bowl. One whiff block, one mess up destroyed the entire play. So, yes, I think that offensive line would be a big target, even though some people kind of think it's a little bit overblown. I think that it should be the choice. Let's stick with offense, and let's go with the receiver. So, obviously, Neighbors, Harrison, and Odunze, they're not going to be on the board. Even Brian Thomas is going to be gone. We're looking at the second tier of guys as well, which some of them might even be better than that first tier of guys. So, Ladd McConkey, I don't know. He's a great route runner with very good hands. I've seen some Antonio Brown comparisons for him. Hopefully he doesn't turn into Antonio Brown, CT ESPN. But he could be really solid, and he seems like a guy that Shanahan would like to have. Just a guy that can find space and get open, get a guy off of him if they're playing man coverage. But I just don't really see the value in picking him at pick 31. In my opinion, I don't really feel like he's a first-round pick. Maybe in the second round, sure. But definitely not a pick 31 in that first round. Malachi Corley is a guy who could slip in the second round. A guy who gets that Debo comparison, and he looks like it as well. Route running, a little bit below average. He can't really get a guy off of him with his feet, but his catch in traffic is great. So even if he does have a guy kind of on his hip and you can get a good ball off on him, he'll make that catch. He'll make that catch. At Western Kentucky, he did a lot of the same stuff that you see the Niners do with Debo Samuel. A lot of these screens, a lot of in motion stuff. He plays inside a lot too, so he could kind of be a little slot Debo, which, having two Debos on the field could be kind of nasty. Troy Franklin, I'm not the biggest fan of. A.D. Mitchell, he's in my top 5 receivers. Oh boy, this guy is nasty. I really feel like he could be one of the biggest steals of this draft. And he would be definitely, in my opinion, well worth the pick at 31 if he's there. Otherwise, if you miss out on him, then the Chiefs are going to take him, and that's going to be terrible for everyone. So if he's on the board, I would not be too upset. Ricky Pearsall is another guy who clean routes, kind of a reliable and scrappy guy. Another guy that I feel like Shanahan could work with very, very well. Xavier Worthy, he's just speed. I don't really see the value in him though. I could see the Niners wanting a speedster, but I feel like I don't know. I don't really know if we need a speed guy. Xavier Legette is also in my top 5 receivers. My top 5 receivers is those obvious top 3, A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Legette. Out of South Carolina, I really feel like he might be the pick at 33 for the Carolina Panthers, so I would not be too upset if the Niners take him at 31. The physical attributes are there. He South Carolina boy like Debo. I'm a big fan of Xavier Legette, and if he slips down in the second round and we trade up to go get him, oh boy, I would be real happy with that. And then lastly, I kind of want to touch on these lower tier guys that we could snag in the 3rd or 4th round. Javon Baker, if we can take him in the 3rd round, that might be the steal of the draft. He is so talented. The Niners brought him in on a top 30 visit, so we know there's some interest there, and I just feel like, all the talent is there. I would love to have him on the team. He would complement Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk so well. I love it. Keon Coleman, I would pass on personally. Just your standard catch and traffic guy. Jalen Polk has got some sure hands out of Washington playing alongside Rome Odunze. I think he could be a solid receiver as well. And so the receiver class is very deep, and we can skip out our receiver in the 1st round and pick one of a talented one in the 2nd or 3rd round if need be. The cornerback class is another one that's pretty deep, but there is an obvious fall off. So Quinion Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins, those guys are probably going to be off the board at pick 31. Kool-Aid McKinstry sounds like he's been slipping a little bit, so he could be an interesting pick. I think he plays very scrappy, very physical. I like Kool-Aid McKinstry if he's the pick. And then Cooper DeJean is a guy who could move all over the place. He can play in the slot, he can play on the outside, you can put him at safety. I think that he would be kind of a fun, kind of a Debo on defense type of thing if he's the guy that the 49ers want to go with. I think that, they can do a lot of scrappy little things with Cooper DeJean, and he's pretty athletic as well. Of course, that's a big part of all of these prospects. They've got to be athletic. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Cooper DeJean. I think DeJean's athleticism has been kind of put in question recently, but I wouldn't mind him at all still. What's his athleticism score here? They got him at the 79, the 7th ranked cornerback athleticism score. So take that as you will. TJ Tampa's another guy that I've been seeing a lot mocked in the first round, in the later first round. In my opinion, I would skip out on him. I don't really see him as a first round pick. Kamari Lassiter is a guy who, if he slips in the second round and he's there at 63, oh boy, I would love that. I think he's a really underrated cornerback in this class. Same with Andrew Phillips. The Niners bought him in on a top 30 visit, and I would like that a lot. Also, not listed here, but DeCamerion Richardson out of Mississippi State. Let me see if DeCamerion Richardson. I'm a big fan of him. I mocked him in a lot of the mock drafts, and I really hope that we can pick him up in that 3rd, 4th round, wherever he is. I think that he's really underrated and can develop. Not a day one starter maybe, but he can develop into that type of role to be a reliable guy on the outside. So the cornerbacks, there's a lot of guys, a lot of hits, and a lot of misses, though. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they do choose to go cornerback, and if so, when. All right. Now, we are moving through these. Okay, so now let's move on to the defensive line, right? Yeah, let's talk about the defensive line. So like I said, I know that they touched on the D-line in free agency, so it kind of would be interesting to see if they double dip and pick up an edge rusher first round. Chop Robinson is a guy that I've seen mocked at 31 a lot. Yeah, I would love him. I would love Chop Robinson at 31. I think he would complement Nick Bosa's game so well. He reminds me a lot of Drake Jackson with the long arms, but a little bit more physical, a little bit more tech savvy, a little bit better with his hands. Leonard Latu is a guy that could slip. I'm not going to touch on him a lot, but because of the injury concerns, we've seen it happen with Caleb Farley. We've seen it happen with Jalen Phillips. Leonard Latu could be a guy that slips to 31. And he's just a beast. A lot of people put him as edge 1, and the talent is there. He dominates. He dominates. He goes wild. He rushes the quarterback like his hair is on fire. Out of UCLA, I personally have the Rams picking him up, but if he can get past that and slips to 31, oh boy, I would welcome that. Braylon Trice is a guy who could be a steal in the 2nd or 3rd round. Marshawn Nealand is also a guy that I've seen a lot of people mock in the 2nd round or so. I actually picked him in the 2nd round in one of the mocks. Out of Western Michigan, he could be solid. I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of these guys. Yeah, I mean, if you're watching after Verse, Turner, Leatu, and Chop, that 5th guy is kind of an outlier. I feel like that's where the fall off kind of is. Muhammad Kamara, I think, is also very underrated out of Colorado State if we are able to snag him again in the later rounds. So these aren't really first round guys. I feel like after Chop Robinson, that 5th guy is not a first round guy. So stay away from the edge rushers if you can, if it's not Chop Robinson. And then going over to the defensive end, I guess it's a separate position. Darius Robinson is a guy who, he's a bigger guy. For the edge rusher, I don't really think he's a guy that would fit the 49ers because I think that they like their edges a little bit more athletic. And defensive tackle, so Byron Murphy's probably not going to be there. Jerson Newton or Jordan Newton, he's probably not going to be there as well. Very, very talented guys that are going to get picked early. So other than that, though, at 31, nobody I see worth picking. In the 2nd and 3rd round, definitely some value there. Chris Jenkins, super underrated. I wouldn't be upset. Michael Hall, they bought him in on a top 30 visit out of the Ohio State University. He's young. He could learn under Javon Hargrave. and all those other guys. But again, the Niners, they traded and signed, 2 defensive tackles in the offseason, so I don't really get the point of double down and picking up another one early in the first 3 rounds. But there is a lot of talent here. I wouldn't be too upset picking up one of these guys. Again, if they produce. Braden Frisk, I mean, he has the athleticism. Of course, we know how well he performed in the combine. He's a combine legend at this point. And yeah, so overall, a lot of holes that the Niners can help and improve on. The offensive line is one that comes to mind, but maybe not the biggest glaring one, honestly. I think the secondary could use some help, especially with how young it is. I guess bringing in a younger guy kind of contradicts that statement. The D line also, you might want to pick up a guy to learn under, Nick Bosa, the free agent Leonard Floyd, and hope that he can get a little bit more production than what you have been getting out of the guys. So yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up this episode, though. Talked a little bit more in depth about the prospects that the 49ers can target. If the Niners take none of the guys that I talked about, I would be supremely surprised. But yes, so thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Gold Rush. I'm your host, Jamin Takar, once again. Make sure you check out the description and follow all the socials. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next episode, which will probably be post-draft. And we'll talk about who the Niners drafted. The new faces in the Bay. Okay, I will see y'all then. Take it easy. I appreciate you for watching. Peace out, faithful.